Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me from Saturday Down South, Ethan Stone. Ethan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Once again, college basketball on my TV. I'm going to be great this entire month. But ready to talk some Vols, ready to talk some Tennessee basketball heading into the final month of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we got Steph Curry, assistant GM of the Davidson Wildcats, I want to say. Are they Wildcats?
Yeah. Bobcats. Is it Bobcats?
I think it's Wildcats.
Is it Wildcats?
I think they have the same logo as Oak Ridge, like that old school logo, if I remember correctly. Okay. And I want to say both are Wildcats, but I could be wrong. I mean, everyone, not to get on my high horse here, but the amount of different sports Bobcats or Wildcats?
Wild.
Okay, yeah. I don't like that the paw print is now just used for Cougars, used for Panthers, Jaguars,
Bears.
Like we've really just caused a lot of confusion here amongst the youths of what constitutes a paw print, because it's the exact same one. We don't know which, I don't even know what the original one was. Who was the first Clemson paw print? Who was that for? Was it a tiger? Was it a panther? Was it, my high school, Parkview alumni that Ryan is excited to talk about, certain Parkview alumni doing pretty well here this week in Tennessee spring practice, but I don't know. It's an epidemic all throughout sports right now, is the paw print that doesn't actually associate with one particular animal.
My high school, we were the Bruins, and we had paw print too. And
are you serious? The Bruins? We're giving Bruins paw prints?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Someone's got to be stopped.
I'm just fired up tonight. Before we got started, I talked about just an absolute curb your enthusiasm rude behavior at the library here in Knoxville, and I'm fired back up again because I was apoplectic earlier today. It just really grinds my gears. It's not that hard to not be just an albatross in public, and some people just can't handle it. They can't handle public settings, and that's just the way it is. Archetype Insiders, Ryan Schumpert.
I got to, and I can't even remember exactly what the instance was, but basically pulled the curb. I was at a wedding on Friday, and someone, it was something in the speech, and I can't remember exactly what was said, but I got to pull is life too short? Do you think? You think life's too short? Which is one of my favorite Larry moves, and in an all-time great Larry Richard Lewis spat in season 3. But that's a great one. Also, that's also the Bin Laden. He's a shirt maker in Manhattan. That's just a great one for any curb heads out there.
The real curb heads. Capital C, capital H there. Ethan, I feel like you're not a Curb Your Enthusiasm guy, right? You don't watch it.
I've watched a couple episodes and I want to get into it. It's just it's so daunting. There's so much of it that I gotta wait until I get time.
I mean, but you can do one a day. It's kind of overwhelming.
You can do a season at a time.
Yeah.
I think the good thing about Curb.
The parts of Curb I've watched, I've enjoyed it. So I think I will enjoy it if I just keep going.
But you're a South Park guy, right? I feel like I've seen South Park merch from you.
There's a whole bunch of South Park stuff all around here. I love South Park. South Park's amazing.
My wife and I, on multiple occasions, she hasn't watched the Member Berries episode, but I do the Member. Yeah, I'm Member. We do that all, it's one of my favorite things. Member Star Wars? Yeah, I'm Member. And it's one of my all-time favorites. World of Warcraft one, and then the Member Berries will always, because that's just where we're at with society. Is do you remember Star Wars? Yeah, I remember.
It's spot on. The thing that's great about South Park is that's objectively probably the worst era of South Park, and it's still great.
I could watch that anytime.
Oh, it's good stuff.
Good stuff. Well, that naturally leads us into senior day for the Tennessee men's basketball program, who took care of South Carolina on Saturday. It wasn't Tennessee's best performance. Zakai almost went goose egg in the scoring department up until the very end with some very uncharacteristic free throw issues, but He was able to get on the board with a point, but he still. How many assists did he have total? Ryan, was it 14? How many did he get on Saturday?
No, that was the Ole Miss game.
Oh, that was the Ole Miss. Okay,
I think
what
he
did he
had
have
8.
Saturday?
He had
8
on Saturday.
Okay.
He had 8.
But either way, passing the ball really well, distributing really well, and doing all the other typical Zakai great stuff on Saturday. But Ethan Stone, now that it's been 48 hours, what are you still thinking about from Tennessee's final regular season game and final tune-up before the SEC tournament for them starting on Friday?
Yeah, a couple things. The first thing I thought about was just how well Chaz is shooting, how well Chaz Lanier is shooting in the final 5 games of the season. I think all of them except for, I'm actually going to check this real fast while we're talking. I think all of them except for one, he's been above 33%. And he was 3 for 8, 3 for 8, 2 for 8, 3 for 8, and 8 for 13 in this past 5 games. And that was against Texas A&M, the 8-3 one. I mean, you've said it before, Chase, and I think I'll keep saying it. I'll take the torch. If Chaz is shooting really well in March, I think Tennessee's going to be tough to beat. And, that's just, it's South Carolina. Yeah. So you take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, South Carolina is still a good team, but as far as the SEC is concerned, they're last place in the SEC. So that's just how that's going to go. If Chaz Lanier is playing well, if he's shooting well heading into March, I think Tennessee's going to be in good shape. So that was nice to see. The other thing that I guess it's more from a defensive point of view is Colin Murray-Boyles played one of his worst games of the season. And he's, a second team all SEC player. I believe he was announced today, actually. And he finished with 7 points, which for him is pretty pedestrian. So that's especially great after Jamin Brakefield had the game that he had at Ole Miss at the 4 spot, similar to what Murray-Boyles did. So holding him to 7 points, the response from Cade, even Dubar, Felix, and those guys down low, that was nice to see. That was refreshing to see heading into March.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it's kind of what Ethan just ended with. I think Cade and Igor, the way they've struggled over the last handful of games, was notable, especially Igor. But for Cade, I mean, he scored 15 points in this game. I think you'd had to go 7 games back for him to have scored a total of 15 points. He played just 12 minutes combined the last 2 games. He was pretty bad at Ole Miss the other night. Fouled a 3-point shooter, committed a foul 85 feet from the basket when Ole Miss was in the bonus, and Felix already had 2 fouls, and he had never had any chance of getting that steal. So for him to play well, I think that was important. And Igor, it wasn't, Igor's definitely it's a bigger deal because he's such a bigger part of the team, and it wasn't quite as emphatic. But I thought he played better. He hit some shots. He was more aggressive offensively. I would still like to see him get more than 5 rebounds, but that's at least a little bit of a step in the right direction. And look, I mean, again, it's especially the case for Igor, but Tennessee's got a 6 to 8 man rotation that more times than not really ends up being a 7-man rotation. And if they're truly going to make a really deep run, they need everybody playing well. They got to have 5 guys each game play well, and really 5 of those top 6 when you exclude Cade, or maybe you could put Cade in there for Felix. But Tennessee needs those guys playing well. They need consistency up and down the guys that are in the rotation if they're going to make a Final Four type run. So I think it was good to see 2 guys that had been struggling a little bit as of late play well against the Gamecocks.
Maybe, I don't know. I just think the consistency is never going to be there for Igor. But I also just think Tennessee is going to be a team that lives and dies with their 3 guards come tournament time. Like, I think Felix Akpara is going to be solid. I think you needed more from Cade. Like, I think Felix would be gassed early come tournament time if Cade is not able to be locked in and give you some real breathers for Akpara. So I think that to me was bigger than Igor, was Cade getting back on track, because he's physical, he's a good rebounder. He's just kind of a pain in the butt to deal with inside. And I think he is the kind of physical guy that gives people problems and kind of irritates some other bigs with just his style. And I think you need minutes from him. I think you really need 10 to 12 minutes from Cade come tournament time to kind of help spell Felix Akpara at the 5, because you saw it, like, he's just asked to do so much because they're so thin at the big spot that Tennessee's shown they can survive without Igor not playing well. Like Tennessee's won a lot of basketball games this season, especially in conference play, where Igor did not have a great game for the Vols. I just think the three guards is going to take them, kind of bringing back to what Ethan started off with. This is like Chaz is playing great basketball down the stretch here. I mean, he's rebounding, he's doing other stuff that Chaz. It took him some time in the early part of SEC play, but he is playing really good basketball. I think Zakai, even with the fun thing about those three, and I guess this is more Zakai than Jordan, or Zakai than Chaz, and okay, let me rephrase this. I'm going to start from the beginning. Jordan and Zakai and less Chaz do other things when the shots aren't falling, you know, like, and Chaz doing a little bit more of that, but Zakai with the assist this week, even with him not taking a lot of shots and struggling at the line uncharacteristically, like he's still impacting the game in a lot of other ways. Jordan Gainey still driving to the rim. If the 3-pointers aren't falling, he's still taking shots. He's still doing other stuff for Tennessee to help them win basketball games. And I just think no matter whatever happens with Tennessee this season down the stretch here, I think it's just going to come down to how those three play come tournament time. If they're all rolling, Tennessee is just a really, really high floor team. I just think it is what it is with the bigs. Is they're super thin. They don't really provide much scoring, and Igor will help out every now and then, but you just kind of, that's just kind of where they're at. And I think it's just the three guards. If the three guards are elite for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks straight, Tennessee can make a Final Four. If two of those guards have a bad day, it's going to get very, very dicey for Tennessee in a hurry. Is that fair?
I think offensively, relatively, it is. Yeah, because I think you're right. Igor's just going to be inconsistent. But to me, the rebounding, like that should be a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's something I'm a little bit worried about with Tennessee right now. So the last 4 games, I think they've lost the rebounding battle. And the 2 this past week, and it was by 1 rebound, South Carolina, so it wasn't a big deal. But the 2 this week were not against good rebounding teams. There's a lot of good rebounding teams in the SEC. South Carolina and Ole Miss are not 2 of them. So from that standpoint, like that, to me, that should be a non-negotiable for Igor. And you're right, the offense probably is going to be inconsistent. And yeah, I mean, I think that's probably accurate about the 3 guards. I would even throw, it's obviously a different standard, but I would throw Jemiah in there when he scores 8 points and gives Tennessee a little bit of a boost offensively. That's usually a pretty good formula for Tennessee. And again, I don't think you're going to get that every single game, but to get that in a big game, in a round of 32 in a Sweet 16 game, I think would go a really long way.
I think that's fair. Do you have a stat of the game on Saturday, Brian?
I did, and I've already forgotten it. I guess it was the rebounding was what I was going to talk about, which I just said. They lost the rebounding battle. To me, it's getting to the point where it's a little bit worrisome, not overly worrisome, but it's firmly in monitoring range, I guess. It's not like let's just like keep an eye on this. To me, it's all right. This is something every game right now I'm watching, and there's, I mean, a good chance Tennessee will get it tested in a major way if they do get A&M in the first round on Friday.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because Barnes, I don't think will do it. And we had this question last year with Tennessee baseball, and whether or not it was in their best interest to go for it in the SEC tournament. We've seen Kennedy Chandler, a VFL legend. He last guy to lead Tennessee to take down the Nets in the SEC tournament. It was a great moment. I'm glad it happened. But Ethan Stone, I just, with the matchup and who they're going to get here and who they'll have to beat to win the SEC tournament and theoretically get a 1 seed if they were to beat some of the teams in front.
They're not getting a 1 seed.
I don't think so either. So my thing is, like, if you're kind of locked into 2 anyway, and you have A&M who's just a pain in the ass anyway, just do the Mississippi State thing all over again from last year. Like, just accept your fate and don't wear down a little bit more. Because, like, these are going to, you can't just not go 100 miles an hour against these good competition. And you're already super thin. And the more games you play here against really good teams, the more you're going to wear out your best players. The more, like, I don't think you can do it, but I want to load manage Friday against A&M. Like, I just, that's where I'm at. I don't think they're going to do it, but I mean, get ready to learn Bishop Boswell for 25 minutes against A&M on Friday, buddy. And just get out of there. Like, is that Is that bad? Is that okay? I want to let's get to the tournament. They're going to be a 2 seed. Let's stop the dream of like if they went out that because of who they'll beat in their bracket and who'll be waiting for them in the final, like, oh, there's a Cinderella thing. They push themselves back to a 1 seed. I just don't think it's beneficial. I think they kind of are where they are, and I would tank against A&M. I would go. It's Hearst mania.
For what it's worth, in theory and practice, I genuinely agree with you. However, like, there's no point for Tennessee to try and win. Like, you got A&M, you got Auburn. Those are two teams that are absolutely going to beat you up. And that's if you beat Texas A&M, and that's if you obviously draw Texas A&M. From a principle standpoint, just me, I cannot in good faith say Tennessee should just try and lose the first game. Like, just me personally, I can't do it. Like, it's Tennessee basketball. It's Zakai's final year. It's everyone's final year. I cannot imagine that they're actually going to do that. I mean, their thought process is going to be, we're going to go win this thing. From a practicality standpoint, I don't think anything that you just said is wrong. It just adds more stress. It's so much more. And on top of that, to have those extra days of rest ahead of, potentially one of the most important tournaments Tennessee's had, at the very least in the past 25 years, because you have to think about where the roster is right now. Like I just said, everyone's going to be gone. Barnes' future is not in question because of how he's performing, but because he's 70 years old. And we're getting to the point where, we don't know how much longer Barnes has left. We don't know how much longer Tennessee is going to be this competitive. I guess 5 years ago, it was not guaranteed, but it was, I guess, felt that that Tennessee would still be good in the near future. Right now, you just can't have that same mindset. You can't say 5 years Tennessee's going to be really good, so we'll always have that SEC tournament to go to. This one, I can't imagine they do it. Like I said, just for that exact reason. Like, there's a limited amount of time left. This is a really, really good team that, yes, is facing a very, very tough SEC that has been, on top of everything this year. But it's a tough thing to ask competitors to ultimately do that.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, that's just anything to say. There's a 0.00% chance Tennessee does not try to win on Friday. But to Chase's point, yeah, I mean, I think it largely does, I think, behoove them to not play super deep and not have to play three games in 3 days. I do think
it's not even just 3 games in 3 days. It would be the toughest stretch of their entire season. It'd be 3 games against 3 top 15 teams.
They're gonna beat you. Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's just the case of the SEC tournament this year.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, that's horrific. Like, that, I don't see how that helps Tennessee at all, to that wear and tear of those 3 games in 3 days. Like, I don't see how that you can rationalize that.
I do think the other side of it, I mean, I do think there's an advantage to being the highest 2 seed over Alabama and being with Houston as opposed to Duke. I mean, to me, I think Duke is maybe not significantly, but definitely a better team than Houston.
I'd rather get Duke. The physicality, maybe it's just 2 years ago. I just wasn't.
There's no matchup for Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag's build is the one thing Tennessee does not have an answer for this year.
Well, hold on. You just got to go back to Purdue, Tennessee last year. I mean, what did Tennessee have for Zach Edey? They were ready to go.
Wait, is there a 7'4" Canadian on Houston's roster that I'm unaware of?
Wait, I'm hearing for the first time Tennessee did not win that game against Purdue in the Elite Eight. I take it back.
To your point further, Chase, and I'm getting into weeds of how the bracket works here, but if Tennessee were to jump Alabama and get Houston, that would mean Tennessee would go to Lexington the first weekend, which would it be awesome for the media. But anybody listening does not give a rat's A about that. And Lexington is a Thursday, Saturday. Cleveland, where Tennessee will probably go if they finish behind Alabama, is a Friday, Sunday. So it kind of builds on itself. Where, like, if Tennessee were to do what it takes to to jump Alabama and like play to Sunday and play those 3 games in 3 days, they're going to have even less rest. They're going to play on Thursday. Whereas if they lose early and they're not behind, or they stay behind Alabama, they're going to have all the way until Friday off and even a little bit more rest. So, yeah, no, I generally agree. I think I don't think winning on Friday is like a bad thing. I think it's more if you win on Friday and Saturday. Like you play 2 games in 2 days and then you have 6 days off. That doesn't matter for a bunch of college kids, in my opinion. But if you play 3 games in 3 days and then you have 4 days off, like
especially if you lose the final, you play the 3 games and then you lose in the final.
That's the worst case scenario possible.
Yes.
Yep.
And you probably do, honestly, just given how exhausted you're going to be after playing those 2 physical teams. And you're probably have Florida or Alabama, 2 incredibly good, tough teams to guard offensively waiting on you. Like, yeah, that kind of has a little bit of Auburn in the 2019 tournament. 2019 tournament. That's kind of what that feels like.
Pick and pop, Dubar, Boswell. Like, let's do it just over and over again, and bring us home. Let's get out of here.
I don't think you had to worry about that too much because Auburn has been the number 1 team in the country for about 2 months before earlier today. So not that Tennessee can't beat them, but
I was gonna say, I mean, they were a Zakai shot away from beating them in the last second.
Yeah, and obviously they could, and that wouldn't be surprising. But I'm just saying, you don't have to throw Bishop Boswell and Darlington Dubar out there for 30 minutes to have.
I'm just doing it for rest, man.
Something.
Like the body blows. Like just no, I don't. Maybe it's Cade Phillips 37 minutes inside. Like you just Felix Akpara is just in a cryogenic chamber until next Friday or Thursday, whenever Tennessee plays next. Because the worst situation here is injury stuff. Like I think you're playing with fire. You have an 8-man rotation, and you're just
You're just being over dramatic about it. I mean, you're generally right.
When have I ever been hyperbolic on this program?
This is like when
Ryan Schumpert.
This feels very similar to when all year you talked about how Dylan can't give Dylan Sampson the ball as much.
It was Tennessee right. He broke down at the end of the year.
They would have gotten beat by 21 to Ohio State anyway. And there was no guarantee they would have made Josh Heupel got every drop of success out of the 2024 Tennessee football team that there was to get. And he did that by riding his best player all season on an offense that wasn't very good. Don't give me this. Ooh. You were right. You were not right. You were absolutely not right.
Ethan, I'm kind of concerned to keep moving forward this podcast. Ryan's fired up.
I'm just glad you've backed off the Zakai talk, the Zakai takes in the group meet from Saturday.
Whoa.
Because that would have me being like you at Fountain City Library today with someone talking on the phone.
Poof. Goodness gracious. Changing gears here. Ryan's fired up. Ethan, Ethan, this is going to be a duo conversation for a little bit. Let's let Ryan settle down here. Let's bring it back here, Ethan Stone. Best moment for Zakai Zeigler all time for you. I thought this would be fun. With all the different games, all the different opportunities for Zakai, what was your all-time favorite Tennessee moment for Zakai Zeigler?
This is such a fantastic question. I appreciate you for putting this on the list because this is fantastic. It made me genuinely. I had
somebody
to think
apprecites
about,
me on this program
for a while.
Let me just one good question tonight.
That's the only good question you listen. Everything else has been terrible.
Trash.
I can leave. Y'all can just do the Ryan and Ethan show here. I can head out.
Except for this one. And
Chase, I'll download the pod when we're done. I'll send it over to you. You can get it uploaded.
Go and talk to the Sports Renaissance one. What happened? I got bullied off my own pod. I think it's still going. I don't know.
My favorite Zakai moment. That was good.
I'm crying.
Okay. My favorite Zakai Zeigler moment is from last year against Kentucky. 26 points, 13 assists, 3 steals. I mean, it was just, I think he was 8-11 from the field. It was the Zakai Zeigler game. Like that's the game. And, he still has history to be written. But that to me, when I think of Zakai Zeigler, when I think of what I guess he has done, how he's done what he's done and what he's meant to this program, it's against Kentucky. 26 points. He was the MVP of the game. Absolutely popped off. 13 assists, which is just his usual magic. I think he only had 1 or 2 turnovers as well. I mean, it was a nearly flawless basketball game. And obviously Tennessee scores in triple figures, which doesn't happen very much. And that's because of the catalyst that was Zeigler. I've got a couple more I want to mention, but I'll let Ryan go first.
Yeah, that was a good one, Ethan. I mean, that was his magnum opus. I'll go two. One's a game. And I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning, the North Carolina game, when he broke onto the scene up in Connecticut, I think, Mohegan Sun. And I was thinking back about this as I was going through it. And he had like 18-5, which is obviously a good game, but nothing incredible. I think what made that feel so great at the time was Tennessee was coming out of 2 years where they could not score the basketball. Where, like, I think in the Barnes era, there are 2 years where they had the lowest season average, lowest high score were those 2 seasons. And the year before, the Keon Jaden year, I know was the lowest. It was like 11 points per game. So it just never felt like Tennessee had anybody that could score at a high clip at that point. They'd gotten killed by Villanova the day before when their offense was not very good. So for Zakai to burst onto the scene like that, I mean, we'd heard a lot of buzz about him. We knew he was going to play. We knew he was going to be a part of the rotation. But that one was awesome. And then I'll just also throw, this is more of a stretch in a game, but the stretch against Georgia this year when that game was tight and early in the second half, and I can't remember all the exact numbers, but I think he accounted for like 17 points out of 19 points on a 19-2 run, had to steal on the inbound pass at 3 straight threes. Like that 3 or 4 minute stretch was pretty electric. And I have more honorary mentions too, like Ethan, but I'll throw it over to Chase first.
I mean, there's a lot. I liked Kentucky last year. Is a big one for me. I think the Georgia one, like you said, that was for this year. I think it's hard to overtake what he did against Georgia this year. Maybe Vanderbilt. He was really good in that game. Was there another one this year that jumps out? I mean, I thought he was really good. If I remember correctly, was Creighton? He was really good last year. Was the Creighton game really good?
I think he had like 22 in that game, maybe 22 and 6.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like he had that was my favorite tournament game of him last year. Those are the kind of ones that jump out here in the last couple, because you have to really go back. And this first year, it was just more Kennedy Chandler I remember more of than Zakai in terms of just like big games and just impact. Because I think you can make the case that like Kennedy Chandler was like the best point guard in the country that year. Like Kennedy Chandler was right there. And I just think it's going to be kind of lost to the ether that Kennedy Chandler was like an unbelievable basketball player for Tennessee for 1 year, and his peak, like he was just a different kind of one and done player for Tennessee. It wasn't like Keon and Jaden and guys like that. It was just, he's your best one and done in the Barnes era, I think, by a long shot. And I should not be like going down this Keenan Chandler rabbit hole in terms of best Zakai Zeigler moments of all time, but that's just what I'm saying this all out loud. of like, why am I ranting about Kennedy Chandler? But I don't know. Those are the ones that jump out to me. I'll throw it back to y'all. It is y'all show after all.
Honestly, Chase, I think that's very relevant because it's funny Ryan mentioned that North Carolina game. That was my number 2 because everything that Ryan said, on top of the fact that like it was Kennedy and Santi's show going into that game. Like Hubert Davis had no reason to believe that 5'9" freshman Zakai Zeigler was going to be the guy that was going to ultimately win that game for Tennessee. He was the leading scorer, Zakai, in his 3rd ever college game. And you know what you were talking about, Chase, Kennedy being as good as he was, like having Zakai right there, that's just crazy. That's insane that you had those two with as much talent as they had that were on the team at the same time. And Zakai came out of absolutely nowhere. He really did. Like, the Barnes was talking him up preseason. And he said, fans are going to love this guy. They're going to love him. They're going to love his work ethic. And I would wager 90% of people just thought it was coach speak. And it just absolutely wasn't. And that was the game, the North Carolina game. That was the one I feel like he really burst on the scene. And everyone was like, okay, maybe we need to listen to this guy. Maybe this guy's someone to keep an eye on.
The Texas game, too, 2 years ago. I don't know if we haven't mentioned that one yet.
Yeah.
That was one I thought
was
was
a
a
really
really
good
great
one.
Zakai game.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it 100% was. I'll throw this as a singular moment from that SEC tournament. I remember he hit a corner three, which is funny because he never takes corner threes now with his role in the offense. He probably hasn't taken. He maybe has not taken a corner three the last 2 years, but he hit.
Are we not calling the Auburn
three.
shot a corner three?
Yeah, I guess that was basically a corner three. But he hit a corner three against Kentucky in the semifinals that I think put him up like 8 with 2.5 minutes left, and he wasn't even like great in that game. But it was just like such a stone cold shot, and it was just like the peak of how much fun those 3 guys were on the court together. Kennedy, Santi, and Zakai. And I think there's a little bit of that. The styles are different, but I think we have a little bit of that this year with Zakai, Gainey, and Chaz. That when all 3 of them are playing well, they're very fun on the court together. And Chaz is kind of that Santi who, you just got to guard from everywhere. A lot of off-ball movement, and Gainey kind of, obviously skill set's different than Kennedy. But Kennedy and Zakai and Gainey are both guys that could handle the ball and get to the basket and shoot the ball from the perimeter too. One other game I'll throw in there from 2 years ago as well, his sophomore year, Tennessee went down to Mississippi State. Maybe the game after they lost to Kentucky at home. And Santi was out. Maybe sick. Tyreek, he was out. So it's like Tennessee's backcourt was depleted. And Zakai threw in I think it was pretty close at halftime. And Zakai went on a heater in the second half. And I think scored 20 plus that night. And Tennessee won a game that it felt like they did not have a whole lot of offensive options that night. And Zakai was really stepped up in that moment and had a really big game.
I'll throw in one more before we end. It's recency bias, but it really is one of my favorite shots from Zakai. The one against Texas A&M. I'm honestly shocked we haven't mentioned that yet. That was incredible. I mentioned on that podcast that week after. It amazes me how fast he got from point A to point B, and then he just knocks it down. And there's absolutely like the way Tennessee plays offense. So you're just like, there's 0.6 seconds or something on the shot clock. It's like, it's over. Like, might as well just give it back to him. And it was a massive, massive point because I think that put Tennessee up 5, definitely up 2 possessions with under a minute left. So just a massive shot, insanely high degree of difficulty, and that's just who Zakai is.
Did y'all notice the play Tennessee ran it at Ole Miss the other night when I guess they got it to 2 with like 45 seconds left? Was the play they were trying to run at A&M where they had the 3 guys in front of the rim and then just trying to box out for Felix, and they got it to Felix that time, and he scored. I can't remember them ever running that play, and that was the exact same play. And obviously they got the first option at Ole Miss when they had to go to the second option to Zakai at A&M.
I also have no advanced analytics to look this up, but my gut is there's nobody who's hit more banked-in three-pointers in their Tennessee basketball career than Zakai Zeigler. He's hit so many ugly threes in his career, and I say that positively, but tell me I'm wrong, that Zakai Zeigler has banked in so many preposterous threes where it's just so hard. It's just like a really hard heave, and he just banks it in, like the shot clock's winding down, and it just looks too hard, and it just banks in. It's like, all right, Zakai just hit a 30-footer banked in. All right, sure. I swear he's good for that. He does that at least once every 2 to 3 games. Like, he is a bank 3-point assassin. Like, is that fair?
He's great at that, and he's also great at the high arcing shot that like hits Jupiter and then comes back down and doesn't hit anything. Not even that's a good point because he really is. He's a connoisseur for just weird, wacky shots.
Yes.
The one he hit against Louisville from the high arching on just a terrible possession for Tennessee. When again, it was like Louisville could not get that game to like single digits, and I think it was like 11 points. They were on a run to get it to 11 with 10 minutes to play, and he just hits that, and it's just, I think it's a fair take.
See, there we go. I love that. Vols football spring practice observations. Ryan Schumpert, you got an hour. Ball Media got an hour this morning. The freshmen all talking today. There's a lot of personality with the Tennessee blue chippers who were talking to the media this morning, Ryan Schumpert, but you were out in the elements this morning. What were your observations from day 2 of spring practice for Tennessee football?
Yeah, no, I'll give you another compliment. Good call not to go position talk and to strike while the iron is hot on a little bit of actual practice we got to watch. I think that obviously Boo Carter getting some reps on offense. What?
I just thought we were moving forward. I didn't know we were going back into just like let's rip on Chase's outline. I thought we were just moving forward. I thought we were all in like there was a lot of harmony going on with our bonding over the 3-point banked in threes from Zakai Zeigler, and then Ryan just torpedoes all that goodwill that we built over the last 15 minutes to throw shade at my linebacker talk. I didn't think that was necessary.
Every 2 or 3 games for Zakai Bank felt a little dramatic. If we want to. It's harmony.
I don't know. I don't think it was dramatic. Ethan didn't seem to think it was dramatic. I think it's a 2-against-1 situation here, Ryan Schumpert. And you even said at the end of that whole conversation, if we could play it back, was like, that's a good call. Like it was just like,
I was trying to add harmony.
Oh, so it was
generally speaking, it was a good call because I do think he probably, in my time watching Tennessee basketball, has the record.
No, sorry.
Boo Carter.
Back to you, Ryan.
Slot receivers. That's my takeaway. Boo Carter, getting some reps at slot receiver just in general. Us physically seeing it with our own eyes, and then Braylon Staley, I thought had a really nice day today. Made a number of good plays, both in some one-on-ones and some team action. So those were 2 things that stood out amongst a lot of other small ones that you don't really know how much to read into some of them. And some of them, I think not to read in too much, but a slot receivers would be what I'd harp on.
I also just think it's interesting when you look at just who's working with who. I mean, it seems like David Sanders looks ready to go. Like it seems like everyone who's seen it is like David Sanders is going to be a plug and play right tackle. I think the fact that it's going to be a battle at center with Anderson and Satterwhite as the 2 leaders in the clubhouse to compete there. I think it's going to be a battle at running back. Like when you look at kind of just Dwayne Morris turning heads a little bit, turning heads. Star Thomas is just a kind of a luxury transfer out of Duke, and you have Peyton Lewis and Deshaun Bishop running. I mean, Brent Hubbs, I think was talking about like Bishop, like he's all in on Deshaun Bishop, and my thing with Bishop is like we know what he is. He's just got to stay healthy. Like everything for Bishop is like I got to see him on the field consistently. After getting 1,300 carries over his last 2 years at Carnes, but I mean, I think the most curious thing to me is who's working in the secondary right now, because you don't have Jermod McCoy obviously for all spring and summer, and you're working Jalen McMurray and Ricky Gibson at the starting corner spots. That one's expected. But like the safety spot, like you had Andre Turrentine and who was the John Slaughter was in the first team. And then you have Jacoby Thomas and Idris Farouk coming in after. Then you have Caleb Beasley, I think, working behind Boo at star a little bit. And I think Dylan Lewis, the freshman from Milton, was working some star. And they have to figure out a backup star position guy because Christian Harrison moved on in the portal to Cincinnati. So that's kind of a sneaky important thing, too. If Boo's going to be playing both ways, which it very much looks like Boo Carter is going to be getting some snaps in the slot for Tennessee, that you're going to have a guy to play a significant number of snaps to keep him healthy, and also just keep that energy up and monitor his snap count every Saturday, because it's different to have that kind of snap count when you're a corner and receiver, which is what Travis Hunter did a year ago. It's also Big 12 play versus SEC play. I think it's a little bit different when Boo's getting tackled by Georgia players and Alabama players, and then also tackling them on the other side. It's a little bit different than tackling BYU guys. No offense, that it's just different level, different level here in the SEC. And Trey Poteet working a little bit at corner, Tyler Redmond, and seeing who's the backups there. But I am going to be very much curious, Ethan, about how that all shakes out in the back end, because it seems like there's a lot unsettled in the secondary right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot unsettled. I mean, it's the first. I'm going to be honest. I was not there in person. I don't really know the spring schedule very well, but I do know it's insanely early.
It's practice number 2. They had the first one on Friday. Yeah,
there's a lot of positions and lineups to be settled. Obviously, I thought it was really interesting, the secondary as well, when I was just looking stuff over. My main, I guess, question was, what are they going to do with Boo? Like that's the thing that came to me, because like I said, it's hard for me, especially in basketball season, to put too much effort in thinking about where people are going to be, how people are going to do this, and so on. but seeing Boo Carter doing what he said he wanted to do, and he wanted to be on offense, it makes me wonder how often is he going to be used as a split receiver / slot receiver? How often is he going to be used in the backfield where his speed and kind of shiftiness can actually, I mean, I don't want to say Deebo Samuel because he's Deebo Samuel, but can he be that kind of role, I guess, for Tennessee?
That's what I would be. Your old friend.
Yeah, something like that, like Cordero Patterson, like that sort of guy. I feel like that's where Boo could be, could do most of his damage rather than being split or in the slot or what be it. Like I say, I wasn't there at practice. I don't know where he was lining up, but that's where my attention, I guess, was from the day of practice, and obviously media being able to be there and reading through all that stuff. That's where my attention went to.
I'm excited. I watched all the videos. I don't know if Rocky Top Insider put up a video today because I didn't see anything, Ryan Schumpert. I didn't hear any B-roll or my favorite royalty-free music, and you had a long episode potential here today, so that was kind of annoying.
Well, we couldn't film all of it, so the episode length would have been normal, but Rick had some meetings to be in. I do have. All right, you're gonna have to throw it back to me in a second. Maybe I'll do this to close the pod. But there was a Chase Thomas shout out in the Rocky Top Insider YouTube messages. Oh man, this is driving me crazy. I can't find them. Well, I'll do some searching when I'm not talking. But yeah, no, I mean it was fun to watch today. Jacoby Thomas had some words for Boo Carter when he won a one-on-one rep against him. That was fun.
Can we pencil him in as a leader? Because we were wondering about who the new leaders are going to be. I think Jacoby Thomas. Yeah. He's tended. I don't know. Y'all are too young for this, but Greg Blue. Do y'all remember Greg Blue in the early 2000s for Georgia? Heavy hitter, like just safety. He was back when like it was just the hard hits on with Tom Jackson and company where it's like bam, like back when you were like celebrating big hits. Jacoby Thomas is like a player from like the early 2000s, late 1990s. That's kind of jarring to see play football for you because I mean he had that blast off moment against Oklahoma. I don't know if y'all remember where Jacoby Thomas just like he's a heavy hitter, and Tennessee has not had a safety like that since probably Eric Berry, where he just flies in and he's just. He's not as talented as and like a superstar, obviously, like Eric Berry, but he's a good player and was good last year coming in. And we didn't know what we were getting with him coming in from MTSU, moving up a level. But Jacoby is a force, and it just seems like he is because he was drawing Boo Carter, right? Like Jacoby, I think, is a respected heavy hitter, just defensive mindset guy that I just. I'm drawn to football players like that because it's like a bygone era where I'm like, this guy is playing football in 2025, and he would have been a dude in 2002 in the SEC. Like his style of play.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely fair. I will say, just as I do some research, we did have a video up today. So
when did it go up? Because it wasn't up early. I didn't see it early.
It might not have been up early. I think it was up of like 4 or 5 hours ago, so maybe this evening.
4 or 5 hours ago.
Okay,
We're taping this late.
I
need it in the morning. Reference. I need it with my coffee. I need it. That's how I start. That's how you get energized.
Where can I find and download this music? Rocky Top Insider, Rick on Rocky Top Insider. Make no bones about it. It wasn't me. I didn't see this. Rick responds with the link. Nice, thanks. Chase Thomas is right. It's a banger. I'm gonna make it my ringtone. Shout out Nugs4424 on YouTube. You're probably listening because Chase was talking about it last week, so you probably literally got it then. Shout out you and shout out Chase. What a call on the music. And shout out Rick for the music find. Royalty free.
That look, he don't miss. Like
little bow and arrow celebration.
Oh man, like I know a banger when I hear one, and that's a banger, and it's fantastic, and it's free publicity for the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel is really what I'm doing. I'm sending folks, the good Chase Thomas podcast listeners, who I now love that are tuning in, and they're like, yeah. Like, I want to see the numbers continue going up with the B-roll practice videos just because the B-roll with the royalty-free music is just a delightful way to spend a morning.
one other, this is fully going back, but one thing you said earlier that I'm really intrigued by is the center competition. Because like at some spots on the offensive line, I think it's kind of like we've seen them alternate more than most schools, more than most teams does. Center feels like a position that's a little bit harder to do that, maybe just because of how integral they are kind of as the leader on the offensive line and keeping everything cohesive. So I'm intrigued by that. If they would be willing to alternate some there, or if they want to have one guy and they're going to be pretty locked into that when the season rolls around.
Yeah, my gut is that they want to resolve that like as soon as possible. Like you want to have the guy there, and it doesn't mean that the guy behind him it doesn't stay ready and get reps, but I think you want that to be kind of understood going into fall camp. Like I don't think you want to be rotating center at fall camp. Like I think that's not a good place to be in.
Yeah, at least by the second scrimmage at the very latest, I think.
Yeah. You want to have a good idea. Now, the worst case scenarios are it's like neither is really separating. You're like, I don't really know what we're doing here. And you're like, uh-oh. Well, that's a problem. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think one of Satterwhite and Anderson are going to win it, and I think they'll be good. I'm excited about both. So I read about this today, and this is just a combination, like in y'all's wheelhouse here. This is a traditional 2003 column here. This is some newspaper vintage column work for me today over there at sportsrenaissanceman.com. I've been thinking about this a lot the last couple of days. Can Chris Brazzell be Tennessee's Jordan Gainey? And I understand making multi-sport comparisons here can be complicated. I understand that. However, I think I made a fair case. And why I think that it is possible. And so one of the things I was thinking about is like the trio, we talked about this with hoops, where that Tennessee is living and dying with their trio of Jordan Gainey, Chaz Lanier, and Zakai Zeigler. Like Jordan Gainey has had games like Illinois, Florida, where he's been integral to Tennessee's success, been one of the best players on the court at times this year for Tennessee. But he's been in a situation where he had a rough year one, moving up from USC Upstate to the SEC level. There was like when he came in, we were like, oh, he should at least be able to shoot, right? Like the shooting should translate over a little bit. He'll get better catch and shoot opportunities. Like it should translate. And it was tough. However, he settled in a major way this year, obviously, and has been one of Tennessee's three best players, I think, all season long. And when I think about Brazzell and you look at his season, it's a weird year. Like his stats were very strange. If you go through, like he had a good game against Kent State and Chattanooga. He obviously has the biggest catch of the year for Tennessee against Alabama. In the games that he didn't make much of an impact, neither did Dante Thornton and anybody else. And in the three losses, Brazzell was just as invisible as Dante Thornton was in those games. So it doesn't all fall on Chris Brazzell. But he did have more tape at Tulane than Dante Thornton had. So if you go through his Tulane tape, it's like in his numbers, especially down the stretch. I mean, 3 touchdowns, I think, in his final 2 regular season games for Tulane. And a Tulane team that went undefeated in the regular season. He has the ability to be a solid piece still. And I think the hype was way too high last year in terms of what he would be for Tennessee. And I think there was like could he be the Cedric Tillman replacement? Because he's huge. Like 6'5", long, big catch radius. It's like Tennessee hadn't had somebody like that on the outside in a while. I think now, with so much attention on Mike Matthews, who first 2 practices, I think, has turned heads. He had a Moss situation, I think, today, right, Ryan, in the end zone. I think he has a strong breakout potential on the outside across from Brazzell. The slot position is also just way more important than being the other outside guy in this offense. Part of the reason Tennessee, I think, has struggled so much the last 2 years, and this isn't even just a squirrel thing. I mean, Chaz Nimrod had a rough year too, and he's gone as well. But like Tennessee had 0 games last year where the slot receiver caught for over 100 yards in the game. 0. This was, you go through the 2022 and 2021 season, slot receiver was feasting for Tennessee in this game. Velus Jones was a first-team All-SEC player in the slot in 2021. Jalen Hyatt right there too, Blitnikoff winner in 2022. And then the slot position just fell off a cliff the last 2 years. And I think it's hard for this offense to get to where it needs to ultimately go when this slot is not one of your best receivers. So I think it's good that Braylon Staley is playing well out of the gate here because I think they need Braylon Staley to also have a breakout year, but it's also might just help having Boo. Like if both of them are good and you're just able to constantly get good snaps at the slot position this year, that's an upgrade over what you've got in the last two. I think Brazzell can kind of settle in on the outside where it's like he doesn't have that pressure. The eyes are going to be on Matthews. The eyes are going to be on Braylon Staley on the opposite side. Brazzell just needs to give you what you got from Dante Thornton last year to maybe even a smaller degree. Like if Javonte Payton can do it, if Dante Thornton can do it in 24, I just look at this and I'm like, I think people have gone too far now with Brazzell in terms of like, he's not going to be a factor. Because he did have a couple touchdowns for Tennessee. He has good tape at Tulane. He still has that frame. He still has had some good moments this past year that it may be for the best for everybody involved, where it's like he just needs a couple big games for Tennessee like Gainey has had for Tennessee basketball, where Gainey does not need to be the guy every night. Like Tennessee is still going to live and die with how Chaz and Zakai play. But Gainey is just giving you, when you've needed Gainey to step up in a couple key moments this year, Gainey has been that guy. And Gainey has been reliable. Like you need Chris Brazzell to be a reliable bunch of snap guy on the outside to help take some of the pressure off these young guys. But I think there is a path to Chris Brazzell just being solid and finding, maybe it's a middle ground between what you had with Thornton and Javonte Payton a year ago and the last 4 years. So I think that's what I'm shooting for with Brazzell is I've changed my expectations for him. And I think it might be best for everybody involved as a redshirt junior that, look, he doesn't have the ceiling that Braylon Staley or Mike Matthews has, but what if you just look at it as like, man, we need just a couple games where you do have some big 80-yard plays and you kind of bail us out when Mike and or Braylon aren't getting open or they're not having a great day. You just step up a couple times and swing some games. Like that's really all you need. The reason Tennessee's offense died and they had so many problems struggling passing the football last year, I think a lot of it just had to do with like Thornton wasn't on the field a bunch. But when he did, he was like your best player was Javonte Payton of 2021. Like you still needed the other guys to do stuff. You needed Brew McCoy and Squirrel White to be much more factors and put a lot more a lot more fear, in defense's eyes, and they just didn't have that. So what you want is like, even if you have a lesser version of what Thornton gave you last year, if Brazzell could just be a B+ consistently with a couple A- games next year, like just give us two A- games where maybe it's the Georgia game, maybe it's Alabama on the road, just a couple swing ones. You just need two. Like just give me two. And I think it's kind of that Gainey thing where it's like, he'll be appreciated. It's like Brazzell was never the Tennessee best receiver this year, but he came through for us a couple times and he was solid. So I think that's what I would aim for is like Chris Brazzell, this year's Jordan Gainey for Tennessee football.
I like the
Ethan,
take.
you want it?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I like the take. I hadn't heard anything about this take. I hadn't read anything about this take beforehand. I think from two different perspectives it works. I think you're spot on about Brazzell not necessarily needing to be the main guy because for one thing, I think you're kind of overlooking expectations if you're asking for him to be that. And for two, like you say, I feel like if Tennessee is going to be really good, Mike Matthews and to a lesser degree Staley are going to be the guys that take the wide receiver room there. From another point of view, a reason I think the take works and I think the comparison works is because, Gainey, after his first year, he has time to learn the system. I mean, obviously at USC Upstate, which is a much lower program than what Tennessee is, much lower conference than where Tennessee is at, Gainey was on fire. I mean, he wasn't just like the number two guy. He was the guy at USC Upstate. Brazzell, I don't know exactly what was going on in Tulane's wide receiver room a couple years ago, but I know that he was a guy. I mean, he got a lot of touchdowns. He was one of their main receivers. And I mean, obviously, when you make that jump, just as Gainey did, you're going to have struggles, especially when you're going to the SEC, which in both basketball and football right now is kind of the pinnacle of the sport. Football, especially with last year kind of being this weird, like no one's really the alpha dude in the wide receiver room. No one really is like stepping up. I feel like this one, especially what you say, if you take a little bit of the pressure off him, you say, hey, just go out there, learn the routes, learn what you need to do to get past people at Alabama, just not people at FAU or Memphis. Learn what it means, like how you can better yourself in the little tiny ways against SEC caliber opponents. You're giving him a much better opportunity to do that this season. I mean,
we don't need you to be the guy. We don't need you to be the big transfer portal addition that we expected you to be last year. We just need you to be Ramel Keaton in 2022 after Cedric Tillman's injury. That's hugely valuable if that's what he can be.
I would agree 100% because it's like year 2 versus year 1. We've seen it before in the SEC. That is massive. The jump that he could take heading into this year, and we don't know what Brazzell is going to be, but he showed those flashes last year. And if you're not even asking him to go out there and be, Ryan Williams or be whoever, be a major caliber guy, if you just say, hey, you just going to go and put up 700 yards and six touchdowns, and that's all we need from you. I think he can absolutely do that. I think those are reasonable expectations, I guess, to summarize my point.
Yeah, I think in the baseline, I agree with the transfer came in, struggled the first year, weren't a ton of expectations going into the second year, has a really nice year, like solid, just a good player. I think, I like that comparison. I liked your joke about it being a newspaper guy column because that's 100% true. That's straight newspaper column out of like 2003. But it's hilarious.
It's what I grew up on. Gotta get him out every now and then.
A couple of things I would push back on. One, and this is Tennessee's slot receiver production did not fall off the cliff in 2023. Squirrel White was Tennessee's leading receiver by 350 yards.
No. You look at it in comparison to Velas and Jalen Hyatt the 2 previous years.
Jalen Hyatt, yes. Velas, no.
Velas was a first-team All-SEC slot receiver.
Yeah,
he was first-team All-SEC.
Velas was better in 2021 than Squirrel was in 2023.
Yes.
It did not fall off a cliff. I don't think Velas had 1,000 yards. I don't know this for a fact. I don't think Velas had 1,000 yards in 2021.
You also have to remember Velas was also returning punts and doing a bunch of other stuff. You're
not talking about slot receiver now.
Well, hold on.
Now
you're talking about guy.
Squirrel
was returning punts.
Slightly different players.
Squirrel was returning punts though.
Wasn't. Not in 2023, was it?
Was he not? He was. I guess. Yeah, it was D. Yeah.
So I would fight back and say slot receiver production fell off the cliff in 2024, which you're 1,000% right. It did. I mean, it's a big cliff too, massive cliff.
He had only 807 yards receiving in 2021.
He had 807.
Yeah, and 7 TDs.
So he had 4 more yards than Squirrel White did in 2023.
Those 4
and again, I will say I think Velas was better. I'm not gonna back out on that take. I just don't think it was a big gap. I think that's more looking at how good Jalen Hyatt was in 22.
I also just think Velas did more things for Tennessee. He was just someone that defenses were Velas was a unique player in a lot of ways. I just think Velas was really good for Tennessee in 21 as a whole. He did a lot of different stuff, and you could use him in so many different ways. The line, it was just different.
Yeah, no, I agree.
He was basically like a running back playing slot receiver.
Yeah, I mean, his skill set was definitely ball in his hands, what he could do then, which was not Squirrel's skill set. The only other thing I would say, I think you were kind of making it as the basketball comparison of Jordan Gainey has a couple games where he steps up, and then you said Brazzell, you just need 1 or 2 games, just need him to go do that against Georgia. I think the sports are different there and how that works.
Well, I mean, look at Thornton. Where does Tennessee go if they don't have Thornton against Vandy? Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt if Thornton doesn't play in that game. If Thornton's not ready to go, I don't think Tennessee wins that
Vanderbilt's
game.
Not Georgia.
I'm just saying, Chris Brazzell, though, if Mike Matthews has a great game against Georgia, and it's Brazzell against on the road at Florida or something, to close the year and put them in the CFP, where he just gets open twice, and he has 103 yards, 3 receptions, and a TD. That could end up being the difference for Tennessee, winning a game in Gainesville. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
I think that's feasible
I do
for him.
think generally that comparison is fine. I just didn't like the Georgia comment.
That's fair.
And
it's also a seed to believe it.
That was the other thing I was going to say. I don't know that his skill set, I don't feel strongly about this take. I don't know that his skill set is the same as Thornton's and Peyton's in the big play ability. I think it's maybe more likely to look like 5 for 80 than 3 for 120. Maybe it's 5 for 80 and touchdown. That would still be huge. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know if he has quite the big play juice Certainly not that Thornton had. And I guess Peyton was the same way.
I mean, he
Peyton,
averaged 16.2 yards per reception, 5 TDs. His longest catch, to your point, was 47 yards in 2023. But I mean, he was consistent. That's the weird thing. Is like that the difference with him and Thornton, which is so weird, is like Thornton had no tape really at Oregon. Like he was a theoretical burner who could be developed at Tennessee. Brazzell was like not theoretical. Brazzell was like, oh, here's all the production on a really good, the best G5 team that year, where he had 5 receptions, 93 yards, 18.6 yards per reception in his last game against UTSA, 2 TDs, 7 receptions, 103 yards. But it's kind of your point, Ryan, where it's going to be more receptions to get to that 100 yards. But that's okay. Like I think if you could give a souped up Ramel Keaton. Like Ramel Keaton had the biggest catch in the Florida game where he leaves his feet. So like that's what I'm looking for. Yeah. And I want 50 snaps a game from Brazzell. Like that's the other part. It's like settle in where the coaches can trust you to play 50 snaps. So these young guys don't have all the pressure to play them, and you're not going super young. Like I am concerned if you have to throw Travis Smith out a bunch and you're going 3 either redshirt freshmen and then a true freshman. Like Brazzell, I think. You got to settle in, man. We need you to be like the 50 snap guy, solid, and just do a couple things for us every now and then. And I think that's a lot less pressure on him, and maybe that opens it up a little bit more for him. Is like the attention's off him. The attention's going towards Mike and Braylon.
Yeah, I like the Keaton comparison a lot. I think their games are similar, and what Keaton did in 2022, if you get that from Brazzell this year, that would be huge.
Final thing here. Let's wrap up with some baseball. Tennessee stays perfect over the weekend with St. Bonaventure to town. Now we've got SEC play finally kicking off here this weekend. But your biggest story of the weekend, Ryan Schumpert, was what for Tennessee?
I think it's got to be, well, I think, like the takeaway situation's got to be Dalton Bargo. For him to get 3 starts and him to stack 3 good games going into SEC play. Like it felt like he was kind of that first guy off the bench, going to get some opportunities, but just like probably not going to be a guy that starts the first weekend in SEC play. Gets a start the first weekend of SEC play, and now it feels like he probably will. And I think he's in that mix with Jay Abernathy in left field to get some starts there. I think in Manny, Marin had a really nice weekend too, so it's not like he was giving up any ground, but maybe Bargo gets some opportunities there. I think Bargo asserted himself a little bit this weekend and made a picture that was starting to look relatively clear for Tennessee baseball of what their starting lineup could be without Alberto Osuna. I think Bargo made it look a little bit more fuzzy, which is a credit to him.
I like that. I mean, I think that's still a thin margin of error for him because of who he's competing against for opportunities. And he did what he was supposed to do this weekend against St. Bonaventure, and he's an easy guy to root for. I do still wonder, like, I mean, SEC play, like, we just kind of pencil it, like, he's seen it. Like, Bargo has been in conference play for years, and we have no idea what Manny Marin or Levi Clark or really Stone Lawless or Jay Abernathy, what these guys are going to look like against SEC pitching. And that's why you just kind of wanted to fast forward. It's like, yeah, look, it doesn't mean like you don't take anything away from Tennessee being one of the final 2 undefeated teams standing here with Florida State. But it's also like, I really want to see how these freshmen handle SEC play, because you don't have Ozuna. You don't have that kind of, it's just, you're going to have to play some freshmen now. And now you're just, I mean, unless something changes, right? Like Ozuna sent a letter today, but I mean, it doesn't seem, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, but it does seem here in nearly March, middle of March, that Ozuna making it in seems unlikely, right? Like this is your group, but it's also like something I've thought about, Ryan, is like, how would that mess with Levi? Like Ozuna coming back would, I feel like, impact Levi Clark the most, right? Potentially, or no?
I think Manny the most, Levi the second most.
Okay, and that's something I was thinking about. Where I'm
but
like,
those are 1 and 2, and to your point about freshmen,
and they're playing really well. It's like, do you want to stunt that development? Yeah. And it's just a weird because like you didn't. If you gave Tony true serum, do you think he would have expected these kind of starts from both Levi and Manny?
No, not to this degree.
Yeah, and that's why you bring in Ozuna earlier. Is like, like plug and play, ready to go, great kid. I don't know if you can do that now. Like, it's one of those awkward conversations where I'm like, I think it's maybe in Tennessee's best interest that they have to play these freshmen, because I just think they're really good, and you don't want to stump this development and just kind of the way they're playing at the moment. Like, keep giving them there's no replacement for just being on the field. There's no replacement for playing, and them not having to sit now. Hey, sink or swim with SEC ball, but I don't know. Levi Clark is unbelievable. Like, he's probably going to be Tennessee's all-time home run record king after it's all said and done with him being a 3-year guy. Is Manny a 3-year guy, or is he a 2?
I'm not positive off the top of my head.
Okay. But yeah, I don't know. It's exciting, and Bargo makes it more fun, but it's Bargo would start on so many different SEC teams right now, and he's just fighting for opportunities in this Vols lineup because everybody's raking. Like, Reese Chapman's was up to the 5th spot this weekend. I guess the only other thing in terms of lineup, Ryan, do you see Inslee being in the 3 hole come Friday?
Yes, I think come Friday he'll be in the 3 hole. I do think the other note I'd say about the Asuna thing and all of that is I think Fisher's been better at first than expected.
And that helps Tennessee, though.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yes, 1,000%. But yeah, no, I think Inslee will be in the 3 hole. I mean, I can see that changing long term, but I think Friday, this first weekend, I expect him to still be in that spot.
Final thing, we'll get out of here. With AJ not pitching in any games until April, Tony revealed this weekend, who do you think gets the most amount of starts in March on Sundays, Ryan Schumpert? Who do you think takes most advantage of this delay for AJ Russell?
I think Tegan Kuhns is probably my pick. But I also don't think it's going to be, let's say it's 4 weeks, when I guess that would be maybe A&M. Let's say AJ makes his debut against A&M. I don't think it's necessarily going to be Tegan's starts all 3 Sundays. But he would be my guess for the guy that takes advantage of it the most.
I love it. Ethan Stone, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at SaturdayDownSouth.com this week?
Yeah, now more than ever, heading into the SEC tournament and the Big Ten tournament, we'll have full coverage over there. I've got a piece coming out, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not 100% sure when it's going up. We got that coming. We'll have full coverage of the NCAA tournament next week. Obviously, Selection Sunday's coming up very soon. Can't be more excited for that. But yeah, a lot of good stuff coming at SaturdayDownSouth.com.
There you go. Go check it out today if you have not already. I saw the podcast has a new logo, and like Saturday Down South did some new logos. So that's pretty cool. Ryan Schumpert, what about you and the team over at RockyTopInsider.com?
Business as usual, some spring practice stuff, some Tennessee basketball stuff, and Jack continues to do a phenomenal job handling Tennessee baseball coverage, and he'll have everything this weekend, and we'll see if things go Chase's way. And for the Vols in Nashville, I'll be back by the end of the weekend to help cover Tennessee baseball.
It feels like I don't like how you're framing this, because it's like it makes it seem like I'm rooting for Tennessee to lose. I'm not rooting for them to lose. I want them, but
you're not rooting for them to lose. It's just you wouldn't hate it.
Which,
I mean, to your point, I think is
it doesn't help them. I'm sorry, it doesn't help them to win these games. It doesn't help them to play Auburn again before tournament time in a week. It doesn't help them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's generally fair.
Goodness gracious, he couldn't hit.
I've bullied you enough tonight. I'm making it my personal goal on next week's podcast not to bully Chase even once.
Put a sticky note
thing that you're saying
your
on
laptop.
Yes, I'm gonna get in honor of Around the Horn, rest in peace. I'm gonna have a Woody Page whiteboard next weekend. It's just gonna say, "I will not bully Chase."
Friend of the pod, Woody Page.
Yeah,
he was in the pod last year. Love Woody Page. Tennessee alum.
UTK Daily Beacon alum, like Ethan and myself.
There you go. Ethan Stone, Ryan Schumpert, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to y'all next week.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.